Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are really delighted to see you and get a chance to talk about this exciting new program, the Social Norms Accelerator, that we are looking forward to getting stuck into. Let me introduce myself. My name is Cheyenne Shervatka-Church. I'm the Executive Director of BESA Global. And at BESA, we work on 3 workstream areas. We work on the application of systems thinking and anti-corruption. We work on the conflict and corruption nexus, which means a whole bunch of different projects. And we work on, very important to this conversation, social norms change. So what we're going to talk about today is just a quick overview of the why, what, who, and how of the Social Norms Accelerator. And then there'll be lots of times for questions. We're trying to balance not giving too much detail with not being too general. So don't hesitate to jot down your question. There'll be time at the end, but you can also throw them into the chat, and we'll do our best to field everybody's question at some point in the conversation. I think if we want to start with the why question, I think the way to start with that is really to start with why social norms. And the best way to talk about why social norms from our perspective is to explain how we started working on social norms a long time ago now in 2016. In that period, we were looking at how to improve the effectiveness of anti-corruption. And so those were in context really specific to where corruption is endemic, meaning it's happening at every level and across every sector. And we launched a fairly large study on that, and we learned so many different things, but I'm going to only highlight 2 critical ones to this conversation. The first is that the majority of conventional anti-corruption or integrity, transparency, accountability work focused at that time in 2016 and continues to focus on enablers, not drivers to corruption. So an enabler of corruption is the elements in the environment or factors in the environment that allow corruption to happen. And contrast that with a driver. A driver is what's motivating or causing corruption to happen. And if we only work on the enablers, which is closing loopholes or stopping the conditions that allow it, that's where we see corruption evolve rather than diminish, meaning it moves to another place where there's another opportunity, because we're not going after what's driving the actual corrupt act itself. The second big point I want to highlight from that piece of work was that the absence of behavior change lenses. Every single corrupt act is a behavior, be it giving a bribe, be it demanding sex for a promotion, refusing to sign some sort of electoral reform process. Every single one of those acts are behaviors. And if we want to create durable, sustainable behavior change, then we need to have behavior change strategies in our toolkit. So what influences behavior? Well, there's a lot of things that influence behavior. One of the critical things that influence behavior are social norms. We describe social norms as the informal rules that a group holds around what is the right way to behave. And so we'll often we'll say social norms and informal rules interchangeably. Evidence is so clear. When strong informal rules are different than the formal rules, the informal win. So what does that mean practically? People will follow or do what the informal rules tell them to do and not the official rules. So if we think about almost all conventional anti-corruption programming, they require people to follow the official rules. And this is why working on social norms is really the critical muscle to make that skeleton of conventional anti-corruption work properly. Because we have to ensure that the informal rules and the formal rules are on the same page. Or, in many cases, the informal will win, meaning corrupt behavior will continue. Diana, want to pass it to you?
Great. So next slide. So what is the Accelerator? And our goal, just to give an overview, is really to help your organizations create social norms capacity within your organizations that can be deployed for the needs and problems each of you is working on. And they're different, and the contexts are different. And social norms are also highly contextual. So our goal is to give you a sort of a capacity and to help you develop that capacity so you can adapt it to what you're doing and integrate it into some of the programs that you can already do. It has three content pillars that we're be. The first is around social norms, and it's around the concepts of social norms, which Cheyenne just started to describe, and we'll go much more deeply into that, but we'll go beyond just the concept and really think about how do you work with them practically. How do you identify them practically and incorporate them into a corruption analysis or in a governance analysis process? How do you distinguish them from other kinds of phenomena? What kinds of approaches are there to change? How do they interact with some of the other kinds of causes of corruption, drivers of corruption that you're working on? Some of you may have a lot of exposure to social norms, at which point you'll be able to go into a more nuanced and contextualized way. Some of you may have less, and the program's designed to sort of meet you where you're at in terms of your conceptual kind of engagement with social norms. The second pillar is theory of change thinking. And as Cheyenne said, both of us have spent a lot of time on evaluation and have found that theory of change thinking can really help to develop effective strategies and programs. And so the idea here is how do you translate some of the concepts and some of the approaches into really effective work and create a strategy or a program to deal with them. And we're focusing on theory of change thinking partly because social norms themselves are highly contextual. They'll be different in one place from another. They'll be different in one organization from another. And the organizations participating, we anticipate, will also have a different focus. We'll be working in different geographical areas. And so there's no recipe. So we will be working with everybody to really think about what's the best way of turning the concepts into practical strategies and programs in the areas that they work in. And finally, deployable capacity. What do we mean? One people is those of you, the teams of 2 or 3 who will participate. People will have skills to be able to strategize about social norms and identify and develop program designs and strategies to address them, as well as the technical capacity to identify and design and program itself. So both kind of to strategize and bring it into the organization and to actually do the work. And you'll have the ability, and we'll work a lot on diffusing the learning in the organizations. This could be, if you're a small organization, throughout the whole organization. If you're a big organization, it could be in your department or division, so that you who are participating can have partners in the organization who are supportive of working on social norm, can work with you to help identify opportunities for bringing them in and applying some of the social norms concepts to improve the work, and will help mobilize resources to address them as well as strategize. And we anticipate that this will look different for different organizations. So as I said before, it's a highly individualized, so we'll be working with organizations in an individualized way as well as a group to be able to do this. Next slide. So how will it work? So there are 3 elements to the program. We will be having virtual sessions online, a couple of in-person workshops, and individualized coaching. Explained a bit of both. The virtual online sessions will be 1 to 2 a month, we're anticipating, where the group will get together and we'll be covering some basic concepts. There'll be time in between for people to work within their own organizations and work for themselves to sort of make that your own. And then we'll come back and bring that together. in between these virtual sessions, will be opportunities for individualized coaching, working with whatever needs you have, questions you have, if there's an opportunity, if you have a program that you want to be working on, or challenges that you're having, some individual time so that we can work with you and the people in your organization. We're planning 2 in-person workshops, about 3 to 4 days. One will be in January at a place we haven't decided to be announced. The second will be in March, probably in Paris, probably around the OECD Global Anti-Corruption Conference. So you'll have a chance to be able to sort of combine with that. Concretely, what might this look like? And here's a sample schedule. You can see this also on the website, and the schedule is not finalized yet. We will be starting in late September and will run through March 2027. As I said, 1 to 2 online sessions a month, the 2 in-person days, 1 in December, 1 in March in Paris, and the individualized coaching. The times will, whether it's 1 or 2, the times will vary depending on the material that we're working with. And we would anticipate there would probably be about 8 hours per month of work and the virtual sessions and the kinds of work that you will want to be doing back in your organizations.
So we've covered why the social norms, we've covered what the Accelerator actually is, and now let me just say a few words around who is it for. And it's for small teams from within organizations that have been put forward by their organization, and the organizations work on accountable governance. I'm going to sort of unpack that sentence from the end to the beginning. So accountable governance, that is just a basket term we are using to refer to all these different ways that our field refers to themselves, be it if you work on ethics or leadership or integrity, transparency, accountability, compliance, public sector reform, if you're hardcore anti-corruption because you're in an anti-corruption commission, all of that fits within the basket that we're using informally to say accountable governance. So the organization must do some work on accountable governance. It doesn't have to be a sole mandate, like you are an anti-corruption organization. No, because we actually think integrated work that's trying to stop the abuse of power, that's integrated into other programming, is also really effective. And so those kind of organizations would also be relevant for the program. So I'll give you a quick example. Let's say that you're working on efficiency in healthcare service delivery, and that might include new digital systems, it might include some training, but it might also include diminishing medication being sold under the table. And so that is part of an accountability governance agenda that's been integrated into a health efficiency program. We think that all applies because social norms will be relevant both to a sole mandate anti-corruption program, as well as to one that has it integrated into a program that might have health or education or governance objectives. So accountable governance, it's a basket term, and we're using a pretty big tent approach to understand it. Organization, that can be a government department, could be a commission or an agency, could be a multilateral, and it could be a local, national, or international civil society. So again, pretty broad. I want to say a few things about the team, and this is really purposeful because of what we're trying to achieve. Our agenda, as Diana has already clearly said, is to create these little nuggets of capacity within organizations. We all know that individual champion approach. That's really hard if there's just one person within an organization that happens to have a particular expertise or skill set. And that's why we're going to teams of 2 or 3, identified and put forward by an organization to say, this is our team that was going to build capacity, and they will help expand that within the organization. We'll have 2 types of folks that we ask for. One is we're calling a technical specialist, and this is an individual who's had exposure to qualitative research. And we're using that word exposure really purposefully. it's possible that they have done qualitative research and they understand those ideas, but that's not required. We need folks who understand simply the basic principles of qualitative methodology, because to do a social norms diagnostic, which means to really identify which social norm is driving the behavior, because that's key to change. We don't get to simply say, oh, there's a social norm involved. We have to be able to identify what is the norm, who holds it, and what are the rewards and punishments that are used to keep that norm in place. And to do that requires some qualitative research. So we need one person who's had exposure to qualitative research. That could mean they've managed it, they've commissioned it, or they've been the recipient of different qualitative studies and have had to understand the methodology sufficiently to be able to understand the findings. That's one of the people. The other person from the organization is, we're calling them the influencer. And this is somebody who can influence decisions, and that might be within their unit, within their department, within their country office, and maybe even within their organization, because we anticipate having very large organizations, but also smaller organizations participate. So we need one person who's at a bit more of a decision-making or strategy level, so that they're able to identify opportunities for where the organization might want to apply social norms. And if the organization wants to have a third person, well, they can either be from the influencer side of things, from the technical specialist side of things, or some combination of both, really up to the organization putting forth the team, whether it's 2 or 3, and how they decide to pick from their staff. Couple words on how to apply, and then I think it's over to questions. So we're nearly done giving the overview. 3-step process. First, we have an application form that's downloadable from our website, and Claire will pop it into the chat as well. It is due by September 9th, but we really encourage folks to get it in earlier, because we're using a rolling application, meaning as we get an application, we're going to review it and start to engage with it. And September 9th is the firm final hard deadline. We've tried to juggle the application form to be as short as possible, but also giving us a little bit of information so we can assess whether or not the organization is a good fit for the program. So each individual team member has to fill out, I think, 5 questions, of which I think only about 2 are open-ended, a short section on the organization, and then importantly, we will need a letter of support from the organization. And this simply means that the organization is saying, yes, this team is going to be given work time to be able to participate in the program, and will be given the opportunity to, pending what the team decides, maybe do briefings, presentations, in some way to share what they're learning beyond themselves. So that's the first step. Pretty short fill in the blank application form that needs to be accompanied by, again, just a short organizational support letter. It's not a referral or recommendation letter. It's just an acknowledgement. We'll have a quick conversation with applicants so that they can ask us more specific questions, and we can make sure that this program is good mutual fit, seeing what their expectations and needs are and what we're able to offer, and make sure it's a good fit. And then we'll sign an MOU, again, around mutual accountability. If you're investing your time and resources in this program, what can you expect and hold us to account to? And likewise, if we're going to be supporting you in this program, what can we expect to hold you to mutual account to? 3-step process, trying to balance it with the rigor, because it will be a fairly select group that ultimately make it through, while also recognizing that people are really pretty busy. So trying to make it as light touch as we can handle in that tension. Now, really getting into the nuts and bolts, but something that everybody needs to understand and know, is how to apply, is fees. The actual cost of the program is, we ballpark between $17,500 to about $20,000 per person, because there's travel, there's accommodation, there's flights, and then obviously the creation of the materials and the ongoing time. But because we are fortunate to have donor support, we're able to break this down into fee structure based on the annual budget of your organization. So if your organization's annual budget is under 1 million USD, then it's $500 per person. If your annual budget is between 1 to 3 million, then the per person cost is $1,000. And if you're in a larger organization with an annual budget above 3 million, then it's $5,000 per person. And what that means is that's a fee, and the rest of the cost, because as I said, it's actually more like $17,000 to $20,000, is that the program picks up. Now, while this is subsidized, we also recognize it may not be within reach for absolutely every organization. So teams are encouraged to apply regardless of whether or not they'd be able to make this either a solidarity, a cost share, or a full cost fee contribution. And when we do have a conversation, we would discuss what the organization would be able to do, and that would be part of the conversation piece. So we encourage everyone who is interested and believes their organization would be committed to this process to apply, because we do have some opportunity to provide some greater financial support. I hope that was a fairly decent overview, but wanted also to then give folks a chance to ask questions.